Hello, so I wasn't going to do this video, partly because I wanted to do a film review, but the film reviews seem to get lost in the ether on this channel, but I enjoy doing them, and I want to have a policy for the content on my channel that I just do what I want, and I try not to look at the numbers, just enjoy making something and talking about something, and if 10 people watch it and they enjoy it, that's good enough for me. So it's a review of a film that I've now seen twice. I've been to the cinema twice in the space of a week, which I don't do very often, but I really couldn't wait to see it again, and it's so much fun. It's a really good film. So, as you can see from the title and some pictures now, I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. So, this is a film that was highly anticipated once the trailer came out. I don't think anyone was expecting it, as far as I know. I hadn't heard talk about it until the trailer came out. And then the trailer was very exciting because it was a very funny trailer, and there's lots of hints about the plot and about its faithfulness to D&D lore, and it did get lots of people excited. So I was just chomping at the bit to see it. So when it came out, I saw it on the day it came out, and I absolutely loved it. Seen it again today, so it's about a week later, or a week and a bit later or something, and no, actually, it's a week later, so, I think, to the day, yeah. And it is nice because basically the second time, it enabled me to enjoy the nuances of the wording of the script more and the acting, because I knew what was happening, and I heard some things that I hadn't seen before because I was laughing so much. And there's two big cameos that are surprises, and the second one, which I did notice the first time I saw it, I noticed it earlier this time because I was looking out for it. So that's quite funny. But I'll get to that point. Well, I won't tell you what it will be a spoiler for me to tell you what the cameos are. But one's an acting cameo, and the other's a cameo to a reference to something that I wasn't expecting at all. That just made me grin like mad when I saw it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? That's amazing. So it was like during the final set piece, the big kind of finale. So just take a few different aspects of the film for a second. So the pacing of the film was fantastic. So sometimes fantasy films can get criticised for I've heard Lord of the Rings being just called loads of people walking around, which is so ridiculous. But there are some passages in the film and obviously in the book where they are walking around, and there's like world building and there's dialogue in it that are built around the world building, and you don't get much of that in this. It's literally fast paced, action scene after action scene, and if it's not an action scene, it's a comedy scene. So I noticed this time there are so many parts of the dialogue that are like setting up punchlines, and which is it's great, and it's not a criticism because it works so well. The rhythm of the film is brilliant, so the pacing is really good. The characters in the film are very true to D&D, but also a great combination of what you'd get in a team when you decide to do a campaign together as players, and also they work really well for the film, and they sort of bring different qualities to the mission. And just like D&D, it's they keep failing, and you get this idea really when you're watching it that they keep having bad rolls. But I'm just going to talk about that for a second, because what I haven't said yet is I do play D&D, and I've played D&D a lot when I was younger, and I've been playing it now for about 3 or 4 years. No, it must be at least about 4 years, I think, as an adult. So I went back to it, and so I play every week, and the campaign is like an ongoing thing. The first campaign that we did lasted 18 months, and that was partly because we had some gaps in playing, and this one is quite a long campaign, so it's taken us a while, but we are playing more frequently. But there's all sorts of things that happen in the campaign, and my character's now on 7th level, so we keep getting experience points from these different things we do, which is kind of hinted at in the film as well. There's a line where the sorcerer says, I've got better, when he's referring to the fact that he can do something that he couldn't do before, and that's clearly a reference to the experience points. So I was going into this film knowing enough about D&D that I could appreciate a lot of the references they were making. Some of the references about specific creatures or specific villains, if you like, I didn't know those because some of that is just things I haven't encountered in my playing yet. But the mechanics of the film, there's lots of references to the mechanics of the game. But you could easily watch it with no knowledge of D&D at all, just an interest in fantasy films, and you'll love it because it doesn't get in the way at all, which is kind of cool because it does mean that they've made a lot of nods so people who really wanted that in the D&D film can enjoy that, but it also doesn't alienate people who have got no idea what D&D was but know what fantasy films are like, and they'd like to see a dragon or they'd like to see swords and axes and magic and all that sort of stuff, different creatures. If they like that, but they don't know much about D&D lore, you can still really enjoy it. So just off the bat, I would say, if you're not a D&D player or don't know much about D&D, don't worry about it. Just go see the film and enjoy a very funny, fast-paced adventure with really likeable characters played by fantastic actors who really sell it really well. So there's a really good emotional punch to the film as well, because it is very funny, but it also makes it matter when it matters. So there are moments in the film where it just wouldn't work if it was staying on that comedic line. So it treads the line really well. So again, I'm not going to give you any spoilers about when that happens, but it works really well. So the comedic line takes a back seat when it needs to, but it is very funny throughout. There's a great scene, and I won't tell you again without spoilers. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, but there is a scene when they go to a graveyard to speak to the dead, and it's so funny. It's definitely my favourite scene in the whole film, and it's so nice going to the cinema to watch comedy. And any film like this, event films, but especially comedy, because the whole place was laughing really loud, and it's just such a great atmosphere. So it's a nice way of celebrating cinema as well, to go see a film like this in the theatre, you'd say in America, wouldn't you? So in the cinema or in the theatre really does make a difference, and that scene in particular, people were really laughing out loud. It's great. I also think the final set piece, so there's like a big climax which follows a lot of the tropes of fantasy films and adventure films and action films in general. It kind of comes to a big climax, but the way it's done is beautifully filmed, because there's quite a lot going on, and the way that it interweaves the different characters, and they're all sort of doing their different things, and the way that the development of the action is really well plotted and kind of makes sense. So in that sense, and I think this is true for the whole film, there's a good sense of consistency that all makes sense, which is really nice. They were really creative with how they created the plot, and again, I think as a nod to D&D itself, there's lots of times when what they're trying to do just goes wrong, and they have to find different solutions and different ways to get over the fact that what they want to do just doesn't happen. So that is like playing the game, because when you play the game, I don't know how much you guys know about D&D, but you make a decision, and the dungeon master, who's the person, the objective person that's running the game, they say, okay, you need to roll for that, see if it works. And obviously, so often you get a bad roll and it doesn't work, and the consequences of it puts you in a different situation, or you're just trapped, or you're kidnapped, or you're in the sea trying to not drown or whatever. There's consequences to your bad rolls, and that you got that sense for the whole of this film as well. So I thought that was brilliantly done. But again, just to remind you, that doesn't mean you're going to be thinking about that through the film and being confused if you don't know what that means, because this absolutely appeals to people who are not into D&D and just want to watch a fantasy film. But I do think that idea that it had to be creative to try and find solutions to their situations when they went wrong is exactly what the game's like, but it worked really well for the film. So again, that creativity didn't mean that they just pulling things out of nowhere, because it was consistent, because they used the things that they'd mentioned in the previous bits of the film, or they used things that would be true to their character, or the characters acted believably. So there was a sense of doubt that happened at one point in the film. And sometimes when you get that sort of thing, so for example, when in Batman vs Superman, there's a moment, like probably the worst part of the film is when Superman decides to kind of change his mind about Batman. And from what I remember, it's simply because their mothers had the same name or something stupid like that. Though that the film was built up with this big antagonistic relationship between the two of them, and then suddenly it changes for not a really particularly good reason. So if you compare that to the big moment of doubt in this film, and the way that they get over that doubt is very realistic, it's very well played, it's very well acted, it's quite sensitive and quite subtle, but also really, like steeped in cliche as well. But the way it's done is really good. And I think that's an interesting point to make in general about this film, that because D&D is built on sort of fantasy cliches, if you like, and D&D is so old now anyway that those things have become cliche, you can easily watch the film and be cynical about that. But it's the way it's done. It's done so well. It's done with an absolute faith in what they're doing. The humour is done in a realistic way, so they're selling it well, the actors, and the direction selling it well. There are archetypes, but that's what the whole point of having sort of certain classes in the film. So your rogue, your sorcerer, your thief, all that kind of thing. Your bard. There are some fantastic moments with Chris Pine's character as a bard as well. Someone that looks so funny, but I just think it's a real triumph in a film that has been there's been attempts to make that game into a film before, and this is a really successful version of that. It's a very successful fantasy film, full stop. You can really enjoy it regardless. It's a fun family film as well. There's nothing too hectic in it that you'd have to be a certain age, so you can watch that with the family. It's got just a great story. There's a sense all the way through it that everyone that was making the film believed in the film and wanted it to be really good. Sometimes you get that. Sometimes you get the opposite of that, and sometimes you feel like it's just been thrown together. And this is definitely a film that feels like they wanted to make every bit of it work. So like the score's really good, the production design's brilliant, the costumes are brilliant. As I said, the acting's brilliant. The way it's directed is really good. And quite important for the D&D community. I think the references to D&D lore are absolutely scattered through the whole film. So yeah, it was nice to see queues for the film as well. So even when I've seen Marvel films, there hasn't been queues outside the cinema to see it. Not outside the cinema, outside the screen to see the film. And that was in both times that we saw it. That happened, which was nice. So it could be a really good success for cinemas as well. I mean, I don't know how successful it's been, but I'm hoping it's been really successful because I think artistically it's very successful. So there we go. That's my reflections on that film. And this is going to join the other film reviews I've done in this channel. Don't do it very often, but I felt compelled to, because it's very rare to see a film like this, I think. So there we are. Thanks for watching. Bye.